Hello and welcome to sim.bc, where right now is right about 18:45 in the evening. I know it's getting later and later now, doesn't it? But is that a bad thing? Well, arguably it is, because it's getting me less time to market the video, edit the video, and actually get the video out before the day's ending. But, well, as I said before, you don't care about that now, do you? No, because you will only care about that video coming out on the day that you're going to watch it. Am I right, mates? Am I right? Probably going to include that in the next New Year's resolution if I keep up with these videos, to actually make some form of schedule when it's supposed to come out, like some time of the day, and probably work one day ahead of all of those days to make sure that they come out on the day when I've said that they come out, on the time when I've said that they come out, because now they come out daily. But it would be nice if they came out daily on a certain and specific time. Now, wouldn't it? At least I would prefer that, mates, if I was the viewer. And, make things that you would watch yourself. That's like key, mates. That's like key. So hopefully we're going to work somewhere around that or towards that in the future. But right now, well, it is like it is now, isn't it? Anyway, mates, that's not why you're here now, is it? No, because you're here to hear about all them questions. Am I right, people? Am I right? Just gonna move myself around. And as per usual, mate, as usual, we're going to start off with rephrasing and recapping everything that we've done so far in this little project. So it goes as follows. Tips and tricks for making an in-between question that is not too hard and not too easy, and is interesting to your audience, because that is key, mates. As we have stated a countless number of times at this point, we know that people tend to drift both in and out of conversations when not feeling it, we're not feeling that engagement, we're not feeling on point, which makes them having a harder time understanding the context, right, in which a question is asked or posed, and hence making said question a harder experience, even though it might objectively, based on the other people in the room, might have been an easy one, right? An easy question in comparison to other questions. So asking necessary questions in order to keep audience engagements is one thing, but it also needs to be kept short and simple. Not short in the sense of a short discussion, it can create a long discussion, but rather that the question takes about 15 to 30 seconds to formulate and not 10 minutes, because nobody focuses for that long, right, on a question. And simple, not in the way that it should be an easy question, but in the sense that it should have one clear objective to answer instead of 15 different ones that are quite abstract, all of them. Ask direct questions, not aggressively direct, but not abstractly indirect, but direct enough so that the audience knows that the answer you are looking for, they should know what answer you're going for. Because if they don't, then they might think that the question is excessively hard or too easy, based on the miscommunication, right, between the speaker, that would be you, and the subject, that would be, well, the subject, the audience. Posing one question at a time can help you as a lecturer to control the development of the discussion while simultaneously engaging the audience to their own interaction in the form of answers. Plus, since the discussion will be broken up into different voices taking part, it's less likely for someone to drift out or completely fall asleep during a presentation of a subject. Avoid leading and biased questions. No matter how much it can gain you personally, it generally does not benefit the group overall. This approach might close out future perspectives that otherwise could make a discussion better and more vibrant, more alive. So with all that covered, mates, with all that recapped, we're going to move into today's main topic when it comes to making a question that is not too hard but not too easy, right? And that is all about speak your respondent's language. Because I can roll out here, right, in me fancy clothes. Not that I'm wearing anything fancy, but imagination is key, right? Imagination is a good 50% of any good video, am I right, people? So just imagine that I'm rolling out here, I'm having a Rolex on my arm, I'm having a three-piece suit, and I'm gonna talk about business. Now, that doesn't really matter if all I'm going to talk about is, rather when I'm going to talk about the subject, I'm using terminology that no one's heard before. I'm coming out and saying like, hello mates, I'm ruling a D132 on the trade market today, am I right? It looks like it's been increasing by a 1.5 or, 1.6 maybe in the long-term resolution here. But if we're taking into the realistic accounting of the situation, it's probably going to be a contextual bias towards what we're actually utilizing. Maybe an echo chamber in there that's been developing an organic development of solutions that is not yet have been applied to the overall logistics supply chain management understanding of the subject. I can just spit out different terms, different terminology that you perhaps don't understand, and no matter how good of a content, how good of a lecturer I am, how good of a lecture I'm presenting, how good of a content in this, if people don't understand it, then that doesn't matter. And this is something that I would argue, is something that is a problem in the academic world. Not so much in the business world. Sure, there might be businesses, there might be managers who are rolling up into their audience, right, and saying, today we're going to work on the D23 object or project, and most people are going to sit there and be like, I have no clue what you're talking about, but at least they know that it's inside the corporation, it's inside the enterprise, and the manager can talk with the business linguistics, right, with the business lingo, them terminologies that they've been using on that, what you would say, factory floor, in that corporation, in that corporate culture, can utilize that when expressing what this new project is. However, when it comes to academic mates, I have teachers, right, so going into class and talking about stuff that we've never heard before. Even if they're talking about something as easy, or I'm not saying easy, but something as fundamental as, let's just say, supply and demand, right, in economics. Supply and demand, the underlying assumption towards, business and the consumption behavior of everybody, right? The fundamental idea of what the entire economics is based on, and they roll in there and they made a PhD about it, right? Yet again, keeping in mind this huge gap between what you as the lecturer know and what the students know at the base level. That is really important to take into consideration, because yet again, you might have done a PhD on this very subject about the supply and demand concept, but for me, who is a new student, right, let's just say that I'm in my first year, I'm coming in, I'm sitting down, and thinking, this is all about economics, wonder what economics is, and the lecturer comes in using terminology that he or she has learned when they took their PhD, because they think that, oh, it's new, it's vibrant, it's concurrent, like it's current, it's something that it's in the research field at this point in time. Now, the only problem with that, no matter how good that terminology might be, is that if I in the audience doesn't understand what the underlying assumptions are first, then I'm going to have a hard time applying the current standards, the current terminology to something that I don't know what it is. You're following me, right? So, or you're following me, mates, I would say. Let's just argue, right, that I'm yet again talking about a water bottle, and I'm rolling in, right. I'm an expert on the subject, and that has brought lots of audience, because lots of audience people, students, different people from different corporations have come to this university because they want to listen to this lecture, because I'm going to go through everything there is to go through about water bottles. And most people are not experts on the subject, but I am an expert. So I will start by saying, well, this is a D-line 93610. We see a typical 5-measure diameter perspective here. Not that it's the best one, but we see the CH6. It's a typical solution, really, to the D56 problem. No matter the 6-line clashes, people are just going to sit there yet again, and this is reiterating the same point, that people are just going to sit in the audience and be like, what? And it doesn't matter what you've said. Maybe what you've said was that water is needed, or liquid needs to be in some form of a container with a lock on it that's easily accessible in order for us to access it. That is what a water bottle is. Now, you might have stated the same thing, but you use this weird terminology. So the people in the audience, no matter how easy the concept that you were introducing was, due to the terminology you used, due to the context you thought that the students were in, due to the the educational process that they were in, or the step in the process they were in, nobody's going to understand what you were talking about. So speak your respondent's language. It's important. It's really crucial, because yet again, no matter how easy it is, right? No matter how easy the concept is of something, if you're using a hard language, an unnecessarily hard language, yet again adding this unnecessary complexity to a question that might be really easy, just makes it harder. Because not only is it the case that people are maybe not going to understand the terminology that you're using, and terminology, by the way, is how do I explain that? Well, it's words that in a certain context, right, in a certain field, means a certain thing. So specialized words for a different field. I just realized that now, that terminology might be a hard terminology to use in a YouTube video where people are going to view this and maybe they're not native speakers, right? Maybe they're native speakers of English. Then terminology will be a hard terminology. Anyway, let's just say that you're walking in there. Yet again, we're trying to underline the idea here that the difference in language, right? The difference in what you're saying, what you're trying to get across to the other person in the room, it has a big impact on how you're presenting these ideas. Yet again, the idea of adding on unnecessary complexity, because not only is it the case, right, that you might use a word that nobody understands, but if you use a word that nobody understands, maybe they're going to start doubting themselves, like, oh, why am I not understanding this? And maybe not just why am I not understanding this, but they might also think that they're not understanding something that should be understood, because the other people in the room, the other students, the other people who have come across land and, well, sky, they flew here, they've taken the boat here, they're driven here, they walked here, they're traveled across countries and countries to get here to this very spot and listen, because they don't know anything about the subject. Maybe they know something about the subject, but they want to know more about the subject. And maybe, right, you as a student think that, well, they have an underlying assumption already of the context of the field, so maybe this was targeted to them, the other people in the room. And you never want that as a lecturer. You don't want to alienate your audience, making them think that, this was probably not for me. You don't want that, even if they're not at that level. You want to introduce it in such a way, using language in such a way, and, well, just posing questions in such a way that everybody should feel on board with what you're discussing, with what you're presenting here. And what is crucial, yet again, and I know that I'm reiterating the same point, and some people are going to say, this is obvious. Well, use common language. It's something that we were taught in the start of our university studies. Use simple English, use plain English, use common English. It could still be formal, right? You shouldn't need to write I in every time that you write something, not when you speak either, but you can be formal whilst using simple words. And that is really hard. And I'm just going to stress that point before we end this video, that it's really hard to speak your respondent's language sometimes, because you might not know what their respondent's language are. You might not know at which level they're at. But then just imagine or estimate the level they're at and put it below that. Just a tad bit below, because rather that you're a tad bit below and that maybe you have introducing new terminology over the course of the session, than that you're walking in with the mindset that, well, they should know this. You put it above, you put the language and the terminology a bit above that, and then you introducing new concepts again, because then people are going to struggle with only listening to what you're saying and understand what you really mean. And you're going to try and introduce new theory and new ideas on top of this confusion that has already been made, because they don't understand the language that you're actually using. So rather that you're a tad bit below what they're actually, well, managing at this point in time, but you should still make it challenging, right? And that you use simple language and introduces new terminology over the course of the session. This, of course, runs the risk that you're reintroducing concepts that they already know, and many people will sit in the audience and feel like this was such a waste of time. But at least you've introduced something that they know about. Maybe they will think this is a waste of time until 45 minutes later when you start using that term in a different way that they've never heard before. And then they will be like, wow, this is mind-blowing. I never thought this could be used in such a way. I never thought CSR could be applied internally as well. I thought it was only an external thing to corporations, to companies. CSR is, of course, the corporate social responsibility. And that's also a thing. I'm saying it's, of course, corporate social responsibility. But many people out there will sit and be like, CSR, what's that? I've never heard about that. So just keep that in mind, that sometimes you will have students, sometimes you will have people at your work who haven't heard the terminology before, and even if they have heard the terminology, maybe they haven't heard it in the context that you're talking about it, right? Maybe there needs to be a new reintroduction, right? Or a reintroduction, not a new reintroduction, but a reintroduction of the term in order to establish what it is in this session. So yet again, speak your respondent's language, and if you can't because you don't know what your respondent's language is, try to lay it a tad bit below what you think that you estimate that they are. And if you realize that you're alienating your audience because some people are thinking like, this wasn't for me apparently, no, I'm in the wrong lecture, try to involve them in some way by either lowering the language, so to say, this complexity of the language in such a way that you feel like they're involved, that you feel like you're grabbing their attention. Now, it might be the case that some of them aren't listening anyway, and that's just how it is, right? But at least try, see if you can pique their interest by changing your language. Yet again, this is a really interesting point to discuss when making questions and when just generally engaging your audience. It's something that I've talked about before on this channel, and it's something that I really like. It's a very broad point, and I know that I'm reiterating the same point over and over and over again. Just bear with me, right? But it's really important that you get this, and it's really hard. It's something that you just need to practice with, right? Trial and error, trial and error, trial and error in order to get it right. Unfortunately, there are no shortcuts to making this, right? Anyway, that was everything for me, mates. Have a nice one. I'll see you tomorrow with use respondents scales whenever possible. Now, what can that mean? See you tomorrow.